Hi, I'm Anne McLaughlin from Maitland Regional Art Gallery, and I'm in the exhibition Masters and Apprentices. Masters and Apprentices comprises of 21 masters works and 50 works by student artists from the Maitland area. The masters come from the Lakeview Collection, and they include works on paper by Chagall, Miro, Picasso, Rembrandt, Renoir, and the artist that we're talking about today particularly, Francisco Goya. And just if you haven't heard that title before, that name before, it's Goya. The apprentices come from 17 primary schools and high schools in the Maitland area. The apprentices and their schools were sent USBs that had on them the 21 artworks from the Lakeview Collection. So teachers and students together could look at those works and respond to them however they wanted, and that comprises the apprentices' artworks that we have here. So back to Goya. Who was Goya? Why are we talking about him? He's been called the father of modern art, which is a pretty big title. He lived in Spain. He was born in the middle 1700s, and he lived until his 70s, or late 70s, early 80s. He trained as an artist, and he went to Italy. He trained from the masters then. Came back and he got a job as a court painter to the King of Spain. So we're talking over 200 years ago. We're talking about a time before cameras. There was no photography. We're talking about a time that, although seemed quite different from today, there were similarities. And it's the similarities of the way Goya looked at human nature that are so interesting to us today, and why he is such a fascinating artist to look at. So he was a court painter during the day, which meant he did lots of portraits of people basically attached to the court, nobility, rich people, the royal family. He would paint their houses, places, holidays, etc. And he also did his unofficial work, which wasn't part of his day job. We also have to think about the times then when freedom of speech wasn't so free as it is now. So in his unofficial work, which were often etchings, and etchings are a way of making a print using a piece of metal, a piece of copper, that you draw onto, and you do various processes to make those lines catch ink. So it's a way of transferring a drawing onto a printable surface. And remember, as I said before, there were no cameras around, so ways of making multiples of an image, you could use etching. Goya was a master etcher. He also, apart from using lines, he used texture and tone in a new way, which was called using an aquatint. And that's how he managed to get lovely greys and blacks areas of tone in his work. So the particular work we're talking about in this exhibition that's by Goya is called Los Chinchillas. Now that translates to the chinchilla was a little sort of rat or rodent. And Goya made a statement about this work. Artists don't always say exactly what their work's about. They think, well, you look at the work, have a think about it. What do you think it's about? But in this particular case, Goya did make a statement, or his recorder's making a statement. Los Chinchillas, they see nothing, they hear nothing, they do nothing. And when we look at this etching in the exhibition, we can see there's three figures. There's two at the front, one lying, one standing, who seem to have these strange things on their heads that look like padlocks. There's another figure in the back who's obviously got fake ears on, and he seems to be moving a spoon towards the standing bloke as though he's trying to look down his throat. And so we think a bit more about this. So what's he talking about? This particular etching came from a series called Los Caprichos, the caprices. And caprice is a word which we don't often hear these days, but it means basically a folly or a whimsy or something that you make up, something a bit odd, a bit out of ordinary. So this particular series, Los Caprichos, of these etchings, there was about 80 in total. And when Goya sort of released them or put them out to sell, he also made a statement in a local paper in Spain, in Madrid, the capital. And he said basically, look, these works, they're not about real people, they're about humanity generally. They're about criticising the folly or the error of humans. He didn't want people to think that they were about real people of the time. So he made this statement. But if you think about it, he's really making the statement to protect himself in case people thought they were being criticised, because some of these works are making fun. They're making fun of lots of different things. So if you have a chance, look up Los Caprichos and look at the other works and the titles and see if you can work out what he might be talking about. Much in the same way as these days in our society, where we have, in Australia particularly, we have quite a lot of freedom of speech, the way people criticise or they might satirise or make fun of things. So Los Chinchillas, the etching that we're looking at today of Goya's, has been responded to by 3 of the student artists. So we have a response from Juliet Kostelova, Hannah Richardson and Ruby Summers. They're all in their own way responding to Goya's work. Juliet's work is a beautiful little drawing of a girl, maybe it's one of Juliet's friends, who has her iPhone and her earbuds in. She's looking at her iPhone and she looks like she's looking at some Instagram post, and the number of followers, you can just sort of make it out if you turn your head around when you're looking at Juliet's work, in the millions. So what's Juliet saying? We're looking at our phones, we're looking at a reality that's on our phones, but is that really a real world? Are we not looking directly, physically at the world right around us? Is that what she's taking from Goya, and is that what Goya's talking about in his world of the late 1700s? In Hannah's work, we have the 3 figures. She's titled this work after Goya, and artists who are training and looking at masters often would look at that artist's work and then title it after Michelangelo, after Delacroix. So what they're saying there is, I'm looking at this artist's work, I'm not trying to copy it, I'm trying to learn from it. Hannah seems to be saying that. She mightn't have intended that, but that's what it says to me. She's learning from Goya, and she's tweaked Goya. She's made the figures slightly different. She's added some other things to it, a wine glass, a mobile phone. There's something else happening. She's making it more contemporary. And that's the thing about Goya. He was contemporary in his time. The other work by Ruby Summers, she selected one of the figures from Goya's work, and she's the figure with what we can see is a hand and a spoon. The hand has a number of icons on it, and the hand of the spoon going towards one of the figure's open mouths has lots of icons to do with social media. What's that about? And the title of the work is Spoon Fed. So Ruby has very cleverly used the title, much in the same way as Goya has used his title. There's a bit of satire there, there's a bit of double meaning, which makes Goya so contemporary today, and it makes the way that these student artists have responded to it really meaningful. Just before I finish, I'd like to commend to you looking at Goya broadly as an artist, and also looking at his Disasters of War series. So there was a very nasty war that happened in Spain in the early 1800s. Goya was in his 60s, he was living in Madrid, and one of the really horrible parts of this war, and it was basically Napoleon, who was the French general, invading Spain with the French army. It's a complicated lot of stories in amongst there, and plots and counterplots, but essentially the French army rumbled into Spain. The local people, not just soldiers, but local people in their houses and where they lived in Madrid, came out and rebelled and fought against that French army. That is where the term guerrilla, not the animal, but guerrilla is spelled G-U-E-R-R-I-L-L-A-S, from the Spanish word for war, came from. And Goya witnessed this, and the disasters of war, he actually saw some of these things happening, comes through in his series of etchings called The Disasters of War, and so I commend you to have a look at those as well. Thank you.